Hey everybody, Joseph Haber here with Tomahawk's Restaurant from Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania. Today we're gonna make a boiled cornbread recipe that's very close to my heart, a recipe from my grandmother that's been in our family a long time, and we'll make a nice cedar mushroom sauce to go along with it here today. First thing that we're gonna do is we'll prep out these mushrooms and get them ready to go. I know some people sometimes are funny about how to clean mushrooms or whether or not you should get them wet or not. For this recipe, it does not matter. Don't be afraid. We'll get them soaking wet. We'll get them nice and clean. We'll get them broken down and ready to start cooking into our sauce. From here now, washed nice and clean. We're just gonna break these up with our hands. I'll take this mushroom, I'll pull the stem out of it. I quite like to do that. You'll find that the stem has like some fibrous kind of structure to it that's kind of stringy. I find that I like that texture. I don't want to cut it up. I want it to stay like that. And then the cap, I'll just break into pieces. I like the rusticness of this preparation for the mushrooms. I think that it gives it a little bit more personality and character than just slicing them up with a knife. Now this will be the basis for the sauce for this boiled cornbread dish. The cornbread that we're gonna make here, as soon as we get this sauce going, is gonna act as like the carbohydrate base for the dish that you would have, similar to the way rice works for a dish, or potatoes, or other carbohydrates like this. And this sauce then will go on top. This is kind of a play off of the sauce that my grandmother used to make when she would make this dish. She would use a piece of beef. She would just sear it in a pan and then slice it, and then would make a pan sauce out of all the bits in the pan. My aunties would always call it a greasy gravy, and that would go over top of the cornbread. So instead of that, today we're gonna use some mushrooms, take a more wholesome approach to it, something that's working with our pre-contact pantry that we always like to work with, and make it our own here, but still looking for that savoriness, that umami-rich flavor to go over top of our cornbread here. So we'll get all of this onto our burner. We'll add a nice shot of oil to this and just let that start cooking. We're gonna use our senses to let us kind of listen to this. It's gonna simmer all that water first, and then you'll start to hear like a sizzle as that water is driven off and the oil is left, and it starts to get those mushrooms cooking. And so we're gonna wait for that to go. While those mushrooms saute out for a little bit, we're gonna break down our ingredients to go into this sauce. We have a variety of alliums, all onion-like things, shallots, scallions. We have an onion here, leeks, whatever that you can find in this variety. And so we'll go ahead and work to chop down this veg. I'm just gonna be kind of mindful of the size of the veg so that in the end it looks the way that we like here. I love using the white end of the scallion to cook in the beginning part of the dish, and then leave the top part of the scallion, the green part, to work into the dish at the end. And so we'll kind of reserve those off to the side. Start to get that into our pot to sweat down with our mushrooms. We'll add a little shallot here too. Like we say, it's a great time to think about your dish, think about who you're feeding, think about what this food is gonna be for. Just be present with it for a second. Set your intentions with it. It will add a little bit extra of that intangible to your food. Shallot, onion, scallion, nice little variety. If you wanted to use all of one kind, if you didn't have the other, that's fine too. It could be any which way that you need it to be. Here we have a little bit of everything, so we'll use a little bit of everything so we don't use too much of any one thing. Last one to the party for this part is going to be some sage. We'll give that a nice little chop here as well. Always working our sage into our dishes. Staple ingredient for us. Gonna bring like a nice amount of earthiness to the dish. It's gonna complement the mushrooms really well. The mushrooms have this savoriness, but they're a bit earthy and like a soily kind of way, but the sage is earthy and like an herbaceous kind of way. And so they just marry really well together. The alliums will add like a little sweetness too once they're all cooked down and everything. And so that sage helps really bring some character to this. We don't have a lot going on in this pot other than some very basic ingredients. That's by design, just mushrooms and some oniony things. So now we can take something like sage and really like showcase its flavor in this along with our cedar. So we'll use these ingredients as a base to highlight some of our medicines that we love to work with. In the meantime, we'll start to prep some of our cornbreads. So this cornbread, like I said, is very near and dear to my heart. My whole mother's side of the family is Mohawk. My grandmother was Mohawk, and this cornbread dish is a staple dish for her and in the community, and helped my grandmother feed her family. So sometimes you just need to be able to feed people, and this cornbread is going to help provide a real base to help stretch out our meal and still be something really delicious in the meantime. We have, again, our yellow corn, masa harina flour that we're going to use as the base for this boiled cornbread. My grandmother would always use white corn flour, but one of the things about this dish that we'll see as we go along, and one of my favorite parts about this kind of cuisine, is that we can sub in different ingredients in different places. This yellow corn is going to be perfect for this. So I just have some of this corn flour in this bowl, and what we're going to do is we'll season it with just a bit of salt. And always in your boiled cornbread, I shouldn't say always, but for us, we're putting some red beans here. We're gonna mix these right into the cornbread. Beans are such a staple. And so we took these red beans earlier from dried. Here, this small red bean, one of my favorites to work with. Put this just in a pot of water on the stove to boil for about an hour and a half maybe. You can't rush beans. They will not be rushed. Just let them go, give them enough water in their pot. And so we have them here. So I've got a few cups of masa harina in here with about a cup of beans. And this one, I'm just looking, I'm going for feel and texture. Now from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some hot water to this to get it wet, to find the texture that we want to shape the breads. We have our pot of water here. Just gonna go through and pour about, I don't know, a cup and a half or so into this. And again, this is less about measurements and more about just the texture of this dough that we're going to be making here. We're going to need well more water than that. Mixing, mixing, mixing together. What we don't want is this to get too wet. What we're doing here as we mix this is we're dialing in the texture of the bread once it's finished. And so if this mixture gets to be too wet, it can be kind of gluey, and our bread will have like a gluey kind of texture to it once it's cooked. If it's too dry, it will be dry. We want it to come together and be able to be firm and have a bite without being too sticky. So I'm gonna keep working this dough here. Our mushrooms, we can hear are talking to us saying, hey, we're ready to rock. We're cooking, we're getting some nice caramelization on the bottom of the pan in there. That's good. We want some browning, all this stuff to kind of really get some nice color. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a cooking liquid to these mushrooms to make this sauce. It's hard to overcook a lot of mushrooms. You can roast them, you can saute them, you can saute them and then simmer them, simmer them and then fry them. You could do all sorts of stuff and they'll hold their shape. They won't get overcooked. They won't dry out like a protein is. They won't get soft like other vegetables. They're really a special ingredient. And so we're gonna use that to our advantage, that characteristic of the mushroom, to really infuse them with a lot of flavor. What we're gonna do is use one of my favorite ingredients to cook with, which is this broth that we got from cooking our beans. This cooking liquid right here, for me, is a building block of flavor in the restaurant, is a cornerstone staple ingredient. I see plenty of people just get rid of this. Don't ever do that. It's an incredibly flavorful, essentially vegan vegetable stock without having to do any of the work. It's the easiest thing that you can make. You are literally just boiling water and you get this liquid at the end. It's got so much flavor. We salted our beans when we cooked them. A pot of beans always likes a nice pinch of salt. All that salt is in this liquid. We won't even let that salt go to waste. We're gonna use the salt in this liquid to season our dish of mushrooms over here. And so now that we've got, again here, been kind of letting this go, building up all this fond on the bottom of the pan. Benji, if you want to get a shot of that. All this on the bits on the bottom, you can see stuck to the bottom. That's what we're looking for. And what we're gonna do is deglaze that pan, not with wine or stock or anything like that, but just with some of this bean broth. And we're gonna let these mushrooms really swim in this broth. A few beans float in there, that's just fine for this dish. You wanna make sure that you give them a mix around. Again, we get a little beans in there, that's okay. There's gonna be some in this dish. There we go. Beautiful. And now we're gonna let all of that bean broth simmer down and infuse these mushrooms with those herbs and everything. And the last addition that we'll add to this now here is some of our cedar. Another really beautiful ingredient, a medicine for us. We incorporate it all over the place the best that we can. There's different species of cedar. This one here has a really nice, piney kind of, cedary kind of flavor to it. It's hard to describe. You just have to get yourself out there and find some cedar for yourself. And so we're gonna really pack some of these little tea bags with this cedar that we have here. If we had a whole branch of it, we would just submerge it right down into this liquid. I love our native ingredients for this, and it can be kind of tough sometimes because you can't just go to the store and find something like this cedar. You have to go usually out and look for it. It's an opportunity for us to get to know our environment around us, our food a little bit better. You're gonna take yourself out of the grocery store and find an ingredient that's out in nature that's just as good as anything that you can find in a store. We're lucky to be able to spend time going and foraging these things and not just have to run through a grocery store and check out with your card at the end, but use your time to go out, get to know an area, get to know a specific life force like a cedar tree, be able to go up to it and interact with it and have a relationship with it. You could take from it and it's gonna be able to give back to you, return your thanks, and it will help nourish us. So we'll take that, and we're just gonna go ahead and nestle that right down into that liquid, and we'll let that go ahead and simmer along with the rest of our ingredients here. We'll bring that down, and we'll let that reduce to thicken up some, season our mushrooms, And then in the meantime now, we'll finish out our cornbread. We'll add some more boiling water to this to get our texture that we're looking for here. Again, a very special recipe for me. It's the only Mohawk recipe that came through my family. None of the other food that my grandmother would make would be particularly native. It was just a lot of just, feeding people. But this was one that made it through. Everybody on my mom's side of the family all knew cornbread, all of our relatives. It's a very old dish that's very close to our hearts here. So if you end up a little too dry, you add more water. If you're a little too wet, you can mix a little bit more masa back into that there. In the end, this is what we're looking for. Something that can come together, can be shaped out, holds its texture, almost like Play-Doh-y in its feel, kind of. Here we go. And so what we'll do is we'll actually break this. This will make 2 nice sized cornbreads. Now from here, we're gonna make some wheels. You could make them smaller into individual sized portions. We'll do that at the restaurant from time to time for an individual dish. Or you could do like my grandmother used to do, make a big one for everybody in the family. So I'm gonna shape these into some rounds here. So once we start to get into the shape that we're looking for here, just use some water, and that's gonna help just kind of get rid of those cracks. Make them nice and smooth. And again, these little moments where you have to work your recipes. This is always good times to just be thinking about your food, where it came from, who's it for, what's it gonna do for you. It's a really nice place to, again, set intention, let it know what it's being used for, and again, to say thank you every day to all of our ingredients that sustain us in a really special way, especially something like this dish here. Okay, so here are our cornbreads. This guy's a little bit bigger, that's okay. They're gonna go ahead and find a home right here into this pot of boiling water. And we're gonna let those go until they float, until they dance, as some people would say. But we don't have to have it at a raging boil, just a bit of a simmer, and we'll let that go until it floats. We're gonna grind some juniper as another seasoning for this. We'll slice up some scallion and some radish as well. We'll keep working. I really like juniper for this mushroom gravy. It plays right into all these deeper flavor notes that we have. These really I don't know, I refer to them as base tones, really earthy, umami kind of flavors. I started cooking in college, but it wasn't until I had kids that I really started to cook and knew that I was gonna do it in some kind of professional capacity. And I became a stay-at-home dad, and I started cooking every day to feed my family while I raised my children, help keep my sanity, honestly. Any stay-at-home parent knows that that is real. You need something to do, and so I put myself through my own version of cooking school in a way, doing that every day. But it still was not when I started cooking from a native pantry. That didn't come until I opened Tomahawks, the brick and mortar, back in 2021. Coming into that space, asking myself, what kind of food do I want to cook? And then you ask yourself, well, who am I and where do I come from? And then looked around and saw that I didn't have any native recipes to pull from. I didn't know what native food really looked like. But the anchor, the through line, was this cornbread. And so it really does hold a special place for me. It's starting to come up here. We're gonna give it just another minute or so, but it's almost there. Our mushroom gravy is well on its way to being finished as well. We're gonna slice up some scallion and a couple other things here just for some garnish to help really get all those flavors to pop in the very end. Hear all that music jamming in the background. Gotta love a live market. The energy that it provides is such a cool place to cook. Slice a few radishes here. All right, let's cut the heat on our mushroom gravy here. I'm dragging the spatula around and I can feel a little bit of texture on the bottom of the pan. That's good. That means that we're thickening up. We'll get all that off the bottom. This sauce has thickened up a bit. Let's go ahead and give it a little bit of a taste and see where our seasoning's at. I usually like to add a little maple to this. It's very savory. Some sweetness can help. Oh man, wow, that's really good. Yeah, we'll just add a touch of maple for some sweetness. Our sauce is done there. Our cornbread is done as well. It's floating around on top for us, looking really nice. I'm gonna fish it out of there. We're right there on our cutting board. Our sauce is finished too. I'm just gonna go ahead and use the back of this spatula and kind of just mash some of these beans. And I'm gonna add that right to the sauce just to thicken it up just a tad. Certainly no reason to use any kind of, roux or flour or anything like that to thicken this. Just some mashed up beans will do the trick. Okay. We'll take our cedar out. It's thickened up a little bit. We have our sage and all of our alliums in there. We're ready to plate up. I'm just gonna throw some greens down and around on here. Not just for show, but also because this arugula will be real nice mixed in with all the rest of the other flavors that we got going on in there. We'll go ahead and we'll slice our bread here now into some nice pieces. Now, if you wanted to, and certainly is common, you could take these pieces then, give them like a little pan sear to give it a little crust on either side. Would be delicious. But for this and the way that we serve it at home, we'll just go ahead and give some nice slices there. Tuck some radishes in on the side. Now we're gonna come through with our sauce and it's gonna go right over top. Add a little bit more of that broth while we're at it. Tuck in some other garnish on the side, some scallion on top, and there you have it, our cedar mushroom boiled cornbread. Okay, so then the last piece of every recipe that you really should do is taste it to see how it is. Enjoy your hard work. So we'll go in and just grab a bite here. Man, it's so homey. Mushrooms are so savory. The cedar links up with that sage and gives like this herbaceousness that's really nice with the earthiness of the mushrooms, all under the foundation of real corn as the base flavor is just, oh, it hits me right in the chest. What we did here is we made this bread underneath. This is an old Mohawk recipe from my mother's side of the family. My grandma used to make, and so we're using that as like the base of the dish, the way that you would use like rice or potatoes or something like that. and then we're putting essentially our sauce over top. So not like, unlike like a stir fry or like a very like potato and gravy kind of thing, but just like, in our own kind of Mohawk way. So these are each piece of the bread. I'm gonna give you just a little extra sauce to go along with it. Madeline, for you. Kathy, for you, go ahead, give it a shot. Should be like a very savory mushroom gravy over this bread here.
I really like the texture of the mushrooms because I feel like some people don't like mushrooms because they're soggy, but this still has that bite to it.
Yeah.
And it has a really nice flavor where I can really taste that bean broth, and it complements really well with the mushrooms. And I really like the texture of the cornbread, where it's like doughy, but not that kind of doughy that gets stuck in your throat like peanut butter, where it's still like a nice swallow texture to it as well. But I really enjoy it. I love the brightness of the different color combinations here, and just like centering the bean and celebrating beans because it's so like essential to Indigenous food.
You're speaking my language. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you. That texture of the bread is just what we were going for. And yeah, you can never sleep on the versatility of beans. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of humble, but they deserve a little bit of limelight from time to time. For sure. Madeline, any thoughts?
Yes, I was thinking like I can't speak to it the same way that Kathy did, but it's really comforting and warming. And like I've never had Indigenous food before, but it feels something so familiar, just the flavors. But I don't know how to articulate it. But yeah, it's very comforting.
Thank you so much. No, those are as high praise as I could ask for. And yeah, the hominess of it too, the intangibleness is something that I'm always trying to achieve with food, because it's so many variables coming together in this one thing. And ultimately, I'm just looking for, to be able to sit down and enjoy something for a second, less so about cooking techniques or all the different flavors. And does it just feel right when you're eating it? So. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate you stopping in and trying our food.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
My pleasure. One of the things that I really love about this recipe and that we kind of looked at today is that you can use this recipe as a framework. This time we made it with this yellow corn. I've never made this cornbread with yellow corn before, but of course it tastes delicious and has its own characteristics. There's 100 different versions of this sauce that you could make, swapping out red beans for a great northern bean, or swapping the mushrooms for a chanterelle or some other kind of mushroom. So you could see the amount of combinations of this recipe that you could create, swapping out different beans, different mushrooms, and different corn, all to make the same dish in the end. So you certainly won't ever get bored with it. And I can't thank everybody enough for spending some time with me to let me show you our recipes that we cook out at Tomahawk's Kitchen in Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania. If you're ever curious about any of the other things that we do, you can always find us online at tomahawktacos.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at Tomahawk Tacos to see what we're up to and what we're cooking.